Welcome to Looking to Make a Difference with GAIL. J.B. Barrie once said that all the world is made up of faith, trust, and pixie dust. And I believe that my guests tonight give us that certain amount of magic that makes us feel more special. I'm talking about a dog by the name of Mr. America, the Leonberger, who actually has his own Facebook page. Mr. America has been seen in Denzel Washington's movie The Equalizer, and he also played Nana in Peter Pan. And if you didn't recognize that quote, that was from Peter Pan. So much can be said about Anthony Rubio and the magic of his fashions. But I think even more importantly is the magic he brings with his trust and his faith when he adopted a beautiful little dog who had been abandoned. And that dog named Bandit changed his whole life. And what can I say about Peter Mio with his beautiful music? Tonight he's going to debut his video Somewhere, one of my favorite songs. In fact, it's even impacted in my life as well. But my first guest, Regina Calcaterra, is an amazing woman who has beat extraordinary odds. She once said that you really, Regina, you said about your beginnings do not define you as the person that you will become. I love that quote. Tell us a little bit about that before we introduce your book.
Sometimes we're all born into a certain situation, and we have expectations, or others build up expectations around us as far as what are we going to achieve or what we can't achieve based on what class we're born into, maybe our ethnicity, cultures, and you know, of course, that there's monetary, maybe certain parts of the U.S. that will affect how it is that your future is going to be, and so you have an meaning like farming or fishery or so forth. And when I was younger, I was born into a situation which we're going to talk about soon. We are going
to talk about it, right?
But when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I realized that whatever it was that I was supposed to be and what statistically how I was going to end up wasn't where I wanted to be, that I felt like I had the power to define my future, and I just had to start putting that plan together.
I have to share with the audience some of the honors you received. And the book, of course, that we're talking about is Etched in Sand. And it's the story of 5 siblings who survived an unspeakable childhood on Long Island. Let me just get a picture of that. But some of the honors were just amazing. You met with Geraldine Ferraro, and she actually asked you, I believe, to help write a chapter in a book. Did that ever take place?
Well, I contributed to, it started out where she had asked me to write the final chapter. And then in the course of her writing her book, she realized that the final chapter wasn't going to be the direction that she wanted to go in. So then she asked me to do research on my Italian-American heritage, because she was writing a book about her mother Antonetta, and the book was about the struggles that Antonetta actually had in trying to raise her 2 children here in America and try to get them to mainstream into society, one of them which was Jerry Ferraro. So when Jerry was writing a book about her mother, she realized one thing she really didn't have was the history of the Italian heritage. So she had then asked me, since we weren't using that other chapter, to research my our Italian heritage. And I really didn't know much about mine. She didn't know about hers. So it was actually a gift that she gave me for the opportunity to contribute to her book. And so I learned my Italian heritage. And then what she did from all the research I did, she kind of just let it serve as a thread throughout the book, as giving people a backdrop as far as the time and what was really going on with Italians.
You also received the Maxine Postal Award, a humanitarian award. You received an award from Chef Tom Colicchio. Do you cook?
No, absolutely not. Well, I cook, but you can't use my or question my ability or inability to cook compared to Tom Colicchio. Yes, of course. So, but he's chairman of the board of the Children of Bellevue, which is an organization related to Bellevue Hospital that raises money for families who have children and they don't have any resources whatsoever. And so every year what he does is he invites the top restaurants from around the city to give a tasting. So all the top chefs give tastings at this event to raise money. And they have a keynote speaker. So one year they had honored me as
right,
being...
with the Children of Bellevue.
Yeah, Children of
right?
Bellevue, and they honored me because of my role
Right.
in foster care and because I served as a role model
Yeah, well,
for
let me
foster
say
children.
that you are a strong advocate of children who age out of foster care. There are some 400,000 children in the United States who are in foster care, and some 40,000 each year do age out of it. And from what I remember is that this particular foundation, you were asked to speak, and many people were not aware of your past, having been a foster child who fought so hard to keep 5 siblings together, you being the middle child. Is it true that that evening you raised over $300,000?
Yes, absolutely. That was the very first time I spoke publicly about my background. And the year before, they had Tom Brokaw. And they said that the room was silent. And and they didn't think they'd ever be able to get another speaker that could silence the room. And all of a sudden I started speaking, and you realize like hundreds of very well-heeled Manhattanites were there. And all of a sudden I started speaking, and the more I said, the quieter the room got.
The more quiet it got, sure.
And I actually realized the power of my words that night and the power of our story. And right after I spoke, they had an auction, and that night they raised over $300,000, which was the most that they ever raised up until that time. And it was because I was telling people where their money goes and the value of it and what will happen to these kids if they don't get the services of Bellevue.
Absolutely. Now, you're also responsible for 9 new laws. You're responsible for the paternity law, where adults can find out from adult parents if they are indeed related. And that was very, very big. You've done advocacy for disabled veterans, correct? You're on the board of You've Got to Believe, which is a phenomenal foundation. And we started to mention a little bit before about 40,000 children aging out. Apparently, when children who are foster children are approximately 18 or so,
18 or 21.
Unless they're going to college, they age out, and then they're expected to make do on their own. How, if one doesn't have the education or the love or support from others, how is one capable of doing that?
It's incredibly hard. What happens in our foster care system is when children turn a certain age, there isn't a push to try to get them adopted, but they're provided something called independent living training, which is basically a checklist.
17
yes, they're
items,
taught,
right?
Yeah, they're taught how to balance a checkbook.
Jeez.
And once they're given this independent living training at the age of 18 or 21, depending on what state they live in, they're literally kicked out of the system. And it's these children who, if we don't get them a parent or a safety net or some type of a connection, that they end up homeless or incarcerated. Because what the statistics show is that half of our homeless population in the U.S. are former foster children, and 1/3 of the incarcerated population are former foster children. So instead of trying to put them on this path to independent living, we need to start thinking about getting them adopted. And that's what we do with You Gotta Believe.
Right, you had 50 children who were adopted, and the loves they found. Now, there's one little boy that I had read about named Davion. He came from St. Petersburg. Did I pronounce his name correct?
Yes.
Tell me what happened with him. I was so worried. He's 13 years old, and he actually wrote an article, and you helped him to get the article out there so that he could make a plea, because he knew he was going to age out in a few years.
Well, actually, what happened is I had written an article after he made the plea. He was a young man who grew up in foster care, and he knew at the age of 18 he was going to age out. So he asked his pastor if he could make a plea in front of his church, and he made a plea to the congregation and asked someone there to adopt him or to find a family. And that story about him went nationwide. Because what it did is really bring attention to what happens to these kids.
Children,
So if you think about a child having to stand up there and market themselves, that's what he was doing.
That's
He was trying to sell himself to somebody.
And no bad
in order
children.
to
It was bad parenting.
Bad parents, not bad kids.
Right, it wasn't bad kids. Look at him. Now, $6.5 billion is spent each year in this area. You would think that that alone might be an impetus to have us change the system. And yet in California, they wanted to do away with some of the money. And I know I saw you advocate there on a couple of shows where you're saying, no, you can't take the money away. It's only going to make it worse. You also worked with Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone. You were the first female deputy. And I have to mention Deputy Chief. And I mention this because you actually start the book in that particular position. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'd like to show a trailer about the book, if I may.
Terrific.
Okay. Etched in Sand. We're going to see that trailer.
I grew up in Suffolk County, Long Island. It's the eastern part of Long Island. And I grew up with my 4 siblings, so there's 5 of us. We had the same mother, but all different dads. My mother was bipolar, but she wasn't diagnosed till much later. So at that time, she self-medicated through drugs and alcohol. We either lived out of cars, behind supermarkets, trailers, on the streets, or sometimes we live in a house, and she would leave us for weeks and months at a time. So we had to work to raise ourselves and raise our younger siblings as well. Since we were kids just taking care of ourselves, we did what we wanted, and the thing that we enjoyed the most was going to the beach. Our favorite thing to do was to build sand castles, which of course would always be knocked down by the water, or we'd be writing our names in the sand in little hearts and writing notes to each other. By a certain point in our childhood, we were all separated and put in different foster homes, and bad things happened to all of us in those foster homes. And we decided that it's much better for us to be together as a group than to be separated and put at the hands of strangers. So I wrote this book to inspire and encourage those kids who are presently going through what we went through. It's a long journey, it's an isolated journey, and it's an often dark journey. But you're the only one that's going to provide light in that journey, and you need to believe in yourself.
Regina, your memoir reveals a childhood of sexual, emotional, physical abuse. But the one strain that I see that you kept doing, and there was love there, was keeping all 5 children together. Let's talk a little bit about the children of the family. You have your oldest sister, Sherry, then you had Camille, you were the middle child, and then Norman and Rosie. And yet, it seems it was your job to keep people together. I know that your oldest sister married young. I recognize that Camille had a friend that she could often stay with. Where did this responsible part come from?
I picked up my responsibility for my 2 older sisters because they raised me when I was younger, and they took care of me. And then when my mother had 2 more children, then what they did for me is what I started doing for my younger siblings. So even as my 2 older sisters, Sherry and Camille, when they became teenagers and were about 15 and 16, or 14 and 15, and started to leave our home, and I'm saying that metaphorically because we really did not have a home.
In fact, may I say, there were times that you would sleep in parking lots, in the car, Cookie's boyfriend's places, shelters, the baby put into part of a dresser.
Yes, on the streets and behind supermarkets and very unique places. And other times we were in houses, but we would never stay there too long before we were evicted.
Right.
But it was, but where I got this sense of responsibility was to see what my older sisters did for me, and I just passed it on to them.
So there was love there.
There was love between the siblings. There definitely was.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Cookie, if we may. There's Norman's father was there for some of the time, but basically it was Cookie, and that's what you referred to your mother as. Now, Cookie had a drinking problem, drug problem with uppers. In addition to that, she was mentally ill.
Yes. And she wasn't properly diagnosed at the time because it was the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and at that time people who had mental illness really didn't want to have it acknowledged because there was some, stigma behind it. So she self-medicated through drugs and alcohol. And she had 5 children by 5 different men. So here was this woman who was mentally ill, self-medicated with drugs and alcohol, had 5 children by 5 different men. She could not take care of herself, let alone the 5 kids that she had raised.
But she knew how to work the system.
Yes.
She knew enough to manipulate the money that should have been coming in to pay for groceries, to pay for heat, to pay for the housing, to get you to school, the clothing. You actually foraged, not just for food, but going into salvation bins to get clothing. There were sometimes taking items from stores. You even, as a child, from what I read, you even took her uppers and you took vinegar to fill your belly until you were so thin that you saw the bones sticking out because you were so concerned about Rosie, Norman, and making sure that they had enough food. What happened there with the with the system, welfare system, that nobody really checked to see that the money was going to be properly utilized?
Well, if you think about it, back then in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was very difficult to track anybody. I mean, so she would go into the welfare office, she would get a check. Sometimes she'd say to social services that she needed housing, so she'd get 1 month's rent and 1 month's security,
right.
And she'd get some food stamps, and she'd get a home heating voucher. And what she'd do, she'd take enough to kind of find us a place to live with some of the money, and she would just leave us there for weeks or months at a time, and take the rest of the money and go feed her addiction. And because that time it wasn't really easy to track us down, because really all that there was a yellow phone on a wall with a long cord. You didn't have email, you didn't have faxes.
No, different
and there
time
was
period.
Yeah, it was a different time. So even when she would register us in school someplace, sometimes the system wouldn't know where we were registered, and they weren't able to track her down. So it was really easy for her to take advantage of the system.
And yet it was so important to keep the kids together. Now, the story hit home. And I know a lot of people out there too will be watching this, and it will resonate with some of the people or people that they know. And it's so important to know that there is definitely hope. Look how much you have achieved in your lifetime, more than many people could say that they have achieved. But when you wrote the book, the resistance from your sisters, was there any of that? And I mean, you're talking about the local color of the community. We're talking about St. James General Store, the beaches. Did you get resistance from your sisters in putting the book together?
They were, my oldest sister Sherry was very, very reluctant. And the reason why is because, you know, a lot of bad stuff happened to all of us, collectively and individually.
Right.
But really what she didn't know is that when you write a story, you don't have to tell everything. All you have to do is tell enough for the reader to understand, but you don't have to go into detail. The readers are smart, they'll get it quickly.
Yes.
So she didn't understand that, and she was so concerned that the book was going to be too revealing. And what I did is once I wrote the manuscript, I gave it to her, because she also never discussed her background with anyone, because she was embarrassed about it. So she said after she read the manuscript that she, for the first time, she felt she was freed. That
I love
instead
that.
of her being embarrassed about how we lived,
It was catharsis.
Yes, that she was actually proud of it.
That.
So
and
it freed her.
That's so true. That is so true.
It really did.
And especially as children, we tend to think it's our fault. And then if you make something of yourself, you don't want people to feel sorry for you.
Yes, or think of you
You don't
differently.
want to think you got this handout because of what happened. But also in addition to that, we're embarrassed by it, and we want to keep it quiet. And that's what I think is so brave and so beautiful of you. When I met you, I was in Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
And I was impressed. And then as I shared with you before we spoke, I was humbled by the book because it took such courage to get out there, to be able to say what happened to you, knowing how much it's going to help other people. Let's go back to this childhood. You know, when you said less is more, you're so correct. There was one instance in the foster family that so upset me, where your two older sisters were put outside. You were accused by a young boy, and you know where I'm going with this, where a young boy had said that you took his yodel, they were going to punish you. I don't know where the parents were at this point, but the two boys had you in a sleeping bag, and they raped you. And Norman, the baby, was present during this. My heart went out to you, and I just couldn't even imagine. I think, and I'm going to ask you this, do children sometimes, as a defense, just escape? What does somebody do in a case like this?
You start figuring out how to use your mind to manipulate what's going on at the time. And when bad things would happen to me when I was younger, I used to count. And by counting, I would just keep counting to get through the situation, whether it was the physical abuse or the sexual abuse. And sometimes I would be tied up in a closet into a bed. And I would start working my mind through that, because otherwise I would have a panic attack. And I would also start thinking happy thoughts. And even though something terrible was happening, I would think of my siblings and I playing on the beach, you know, trying to get clams and mussels.
Yeah, let's talk about that's where the title comes from.
Yes.
Etched in sand. You love that cord. What is it?
Wood Beach.
Wood Beach,
in St.
which
James.
is still there in
Yes.
St. James.
It's barely there. There's a little bit of it left.
It's the one place where nobody judges you by how you dress. The food wasn't there, but you were able to get mussels. You were able to get clams. You're able to eat the weeds. Let's call it, was it
Onion grass.
Onion grass. You were able to fill your belly with that. And the title, Etched in Sand. And as I looked at that with the water going over it, you could reinvent yourself, can't you? You are not judged by your beginning.
Absolutely.
You can reinvent yourself. Is there more to that title as well?
There is. We used to move around a lot, and every place we used to move, we would build a home very quickly. My two older sisters and I would make every place a home, and we never knew how long we were going to be there. And the home could be a car, it could be behind a supermarket, it could be in a homeless shelter. But what we did is we wanted to insulate our younger siblings so they wouldn't really realize what was happening. So we build a home very quickly, and then something would happen with it would be torn away from us.
Right,
Whether
ripped out of there.
Yeah,
again.
ripped out of there.
Again.
And then we'd find
Gosh.
another place to live, and we do it again. And that's what it was. My older sister Camille, she came up with the title, and she said, it's as if how we grew up was etched in sand, where we would go, we would write our names in the sand or build a sandcastle.
Right.
The water would come knock it down, but we wouldn't let that stop us. We'd still go back to the shore and rebuild it again.
I'm going to go back now to, I'm not going to tell the whole book, but there are a couple of passages that were just so insightful. This visit feels different, and I start to yell, "Mama." It lands on my right cheek, a sharp front-handed slap. My head jerks toward my left shoulder, a backhanded slap to the right. "Stop crying or I'll give you something to really cry about." You try to stand up, you can't. She's got you naked. She puts you into a closet. A few days later, because I'm jumping ahead, you do try to escape, and you find this place, and this is going to become your refuge, a place in the woods where you could be by yourself. And Susan comes to get you, and now you come out thinking you're going to be returned to that wonderful home, and you're not. You go back home to Christmas Mama. What happens next?
So my mama and papa and Susan that I'm referring to in the book, they're a foster family that I've lived with ever since I was probably a toddler. And they're the only things I know as far as their parents. And they dropped me off to be with my mother because that's what the court wanted, and she was very abusive. And I decided to run away, and I hid under a pile of leaves across the street. I lived in St. James. And when my sister and my biological mother went looking for me, I would ignore them because I felt that my sisters betrayed me by allowing me to live there. And I just stayed in this pile of leaves because I thought it was the safest place. And then all of a sudden I hear Susan's voice because they must have called her to said, "We can't find her." And I thought she was going to take me home. And
she calls you princess.
And yes, and she picks me up and she just takes me right back to the house. And then after that was when my mother stripped me and tied me to the radiator in the bed so I wouldn't run away again, and abused me so much that I actually passed out from it. But it was her way to say, like, I'm your mother and this is how you're going to live now.
And to show the other children a message that she's in charge. She does other things later on in the book. Again, you're in a closet. Claustrophobia?
I had it, but I worked my way through it.
How
but
did
I definitely
do that?
did.
How did you do that? That's fabulous.
Because I knew where it came from. If you know, if you have a phobia and you know where it actually comes from, then you can mentally work yourself through it. And I knew that it came from her and her behavior, and I wasn't going to let her win. So I wanted to work through that.
One message I definitely got from this is that it's so important we as parents give validation to our children. Right?
Yes.
They need to know that you're proud of them and that you love them. It's so important. That little girl, she went to school, she got some from the librarians, middle country. You got one from a teacher. Do you remember the poem that you wrote?
I did, and I have a wonderful story about that. I have 4th and 5th grade teachers, Ms. Van Dover in St. James Elementary School, and Ms. Muse, who, when I went to Branchbrook Elementary School, that I mentioned in the book. Because that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, is to remind people the power that they actually have over a child in need. When that child in need is before them for that one moment in time, they could actually do something that stays with that child because they're not getting that encouragement or self-worth at home. They're looking for it from that adult. And so this wonderful story about Ms. Muses, I wrote a poem in the 4th grade called Why? And it was, why do people look but they don't see? Why do they touch but they don't feel? Why do they hear but they don't listen? And she was so moved by the poem that she had me stand in front of the class and read it, and then read it in front of other classes. So just about a month ago, I was speaking at a public library on Long Island, and she was in the audience as a surprise, and she actually kept 2 of my poems.
Oh my gosh.
She still had them. So one of them was handwritten and one of them was typed, and she brought them to that.
Regina.
I know, and they were they were incredibly deep and profound for a 9-year-old, which was somewhat disturbing.
For any age, but to know, and she's the one who encouraged you. You have the talent, as did other teachers.
Yes.
You're a special child. Instead of being cursed at and being told, we really are running out of time. And I do want to say this though, that eventually you do find your father, but I think it's significant, and it was no fault of your own, why Cookie gave you the worst treatment. When you ask Cookie and you confront her, and this is later on, and she does die of cancer, but when you go and you speak with her, you ask her, you say, about my dad, because she's always making comments. Did he rape you? Was he cruel to you? Was he abusive? Did he hit you? And she would say to you, no, your dad was always a good lover, he was kind. And then we find out the truth. What was the truth?
The truth was that my mother was pregnant with me and he married another. And since my mother was mentally ill, she thought the best way for her to deal with it was to take it out on the child that came from that. But Gail, I know you mentioned a lot about the book and about some of the challenging aspects of it, but the story is really one, and as you know, of optimism and resilience and self-determination. And it just shows over and over the impact that somebody could have on a child in need. And that's why the book has done so well, because it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for 16 weeks.
And twice,
yes,
right? How
twice.
unusual is that?
Yes.
Would you do me a favor? Would you tell the audience where they can get a copy of the book, how they can reach you?
Absolutely. I have a website, which is my name, which is reginacalcaterra.com. I have 2 Facebook pages. One is a regular Facebook page. Another one is my author page, which is also my name. And I have a Twitter account, which is my name as well. But where you can buy the book is you can go, it's available in bookstores. You could buy it in print. And you could also order it from Amazon and Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. And it's available on Kindle. And it's very easy to find because I've sold over 120,000 so far. So readers are actually finding it. And if you have any questions and thoughts about it, please share them with me, because I love reading what readers have to share with me about the impact that the book has had.
I want to thank you so much. And again, when I said, you know, faith, trust, and pixie dust, you are that pixie dust. You are that pixie dust that's going to make a difference in the life of someone else. Thank you, Regina.
And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. My next guest is born and raised in Manhattan, of Puerto Rican background, which definitely influences his colorful attire, his fashions, and his wonderful demeanor. I'm talking about Anthony Rubio, the master pet couturier. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, you've been in women's wear for over 20 years.
Yes.
And you're in an industry which is over $50 billion.
Yes.
Animals. And you combine them. But what I really love is the story as to how you got into this. And although you have beautiful babies with you right there, they are twin chihuahuas. We have Bogie
and Kimba.
Kimba. There you are, you can see. But we're going to talk a little bit about Bandit first, please,
Yes.
because that's how you got started.
Yes.
And I have to mention that Anthony is also a special ed teacher in the city.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about this.
Originally, I was working at school, and I got a phone call from my brother. He had run into a situation in Brooklyn where they had a small dog chained to a fence, and they were hurting him and abusing him. And he called the police. And I rushed to get over there, and when I arrived, the sight was like, it was horrible. The person who was beating the dog was under an influence of something. I don't know what it was, but the police had the person handcuffed, and they were leading them away. And my brother unchained the dog, and the dog was snipping at him, but I came in and I grabbed him, and he calmed down, and they said that the best thing I could do is to take him to a veterinarian to see what happens, and they gave me the address. So long story short, I took him to the vet, and the vet said this dog has been badly abused. He had fractured ribs. And they said that the best thing for this dog, because he would never survive in a shelter, would be to put him down, to put him out of his misery, and I wouldn't hear of it. So I took him home, and I nursed him. I took care of him, and it took about a year to rehabilitate him because he wasn't very trusting. He bit me, but the doctor said he might live a year, maybe a little bit more. And Bandit, what turned out to be the name I gave him, because I said he's going to steal everybody's heart,
and he
sure
looked like
did.
a bandit.
He looked like
I looked
a
at
bandit.
his face. I saw the pictures. He ended up a top model.
Yes.
And by the way, you're one of the first people who've introduced animals, the dogs, dressed in your creations for Fashion Week.
Yes.
And I want to mention something else, because you're such a kind individual, and I know that you ministered when you were younger, and you always believe in giving back. And a couple of things I just have to mention is that your fashions are elegant. They're like museum pieces.
Yes.
They are art. We talked about the influence, of your background. But in addition to that, you study, it's architecture. We're talking about, as a child, all the fashion, the 20 years. You give 1/3 of the money back to shelters, and you go in and actually feed animals.
Yes, yes.
You are an animal lover.
Yes, I am. True to the very end. I'm not afraid of animals.
No,
I've handled reptiles, and you name it, we've had them all. And my big thing is that when I rescued Bandit, I made a promise that from then on I was going to be an advocate for those who do not speak. So I try to educate, because I always say that people behave because of ignorance. It's not stupidity, it's ignorance.
Right.
They can't talk about what they don't know.
Exactly.
So I enlighten them, and I feel that I can touch their lives, if at least for a few minutes, by letting them know what's going on in this world, what's going on with the animals. And it's been very fulfilling, because I see people taking in animals now that need homes, forever homes.
Yeah, you are a strong advocate of adopting.
Oh yeah, a pet adoption, research
what was the
for
song?
cancer.
You had a song out that actually went viral.
Yes, the boys went viral with "Adopt Me Baby" after the Carly Rae song "Call Me Maybe," and that went viral, and it became a big campaign which reached the farthest corners of the world. I was getting emails from everywhere, asking for permission to use the catchphrase, and it's still being used to this day. It's been more than 2 years, and it's been
You're also known with the Donald Trump comb over that you did, and the Elvis, and you had him in books, and these babies are also in books. You've been on so many different shows, from CNN, even last night with the Golden Globes. You want to share a little something about that as well?
I was called by Kat Greenleaf of NBC's Talk Stoop, which is a really fabulous show. She gets to the point and asks celebrities the deepest questions. And she had a special show for the Golden Globes, and her people contacted me. I had met her at a fundraiser for dogs. And they contacted me and asked if I could design something for her co-host, the bulldog named Gracie. And
it was cute. I saw the fashion.
The light bulb went off in my head, and I designed a dress that was reminiscent of something worn by Amal Clooney, George Clooney's fiance, before she married him, by Jean-Baptiste Valli. And they fell in love with the dress, and they were like, do you think we can create a whole line for her for the night of the event? So I designed 3 different looks, and then she had a date, so I had to design tuxedos for the boy. And the show aired last night, and I've been getting nothing but emails all morning. Everybody complimenting, and people saying that they recognize my work. And as a result, they're asking me to be a constant designer for the show, whenever they have an opportunity.
Let's take a look at what he's wearing. Let's hold that up a little bit. Now, I want to be very clear about this, too. Your fashions, you have no dye. You have nothing that can hurt.
I don't dye anything.
Yeah, explain.
You can see it's stretch fabrics.
They're
very comfortable. They do sleep in it sometimes. It's a lot of the work is hand done, the hand embellishments, and they are very comfortable, as you can see. And they enjoy the fashions. Look, he's falling asleep here. Yeah, and this is one reminiscent of a movie that's called. That was done by Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come. There's a scene from the movie that I did in stones and flowers and things on a kimono. And like I said, the boys enjoy it, and I make sure that my clients are aware that I don't use any kind of items that would endanger the animal at all, because, like I said, I'm about the safety.
The safety.
Yes.
What do we have here?
This is a dress from one of my last shows that I created for a girl, and as you can see, it's very, very lightweight. And
what kind of crystals are these?
No, this is glitter that's been glued on there. It looks like crystals. I used the Swarovski crystals, and this one are in the buckle. The buckle back here on the bow is Swarovski's.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's like, it's very reminiscent of Dolce & Gabbana. So it's got ruffles, and the color is very hot this season.
You also like Karl Lagerfeld.
I've met Karl Lagerfeld.
Did
yeah,
you?
It's hilarious. I ran into him in
that.
Vegas.
And McQueen. Alexander McQueen.
Alexander McQueen's exhibit was an inspiration for another line I did. The exhibit he had at the Metropolitan Museum, which was called Savage Beauty. I'm in the museums. I'm at the fashion shows in New York Fashion Week. I do the Fashion Week Brooklyn. I go to anything that has to do with fashion and art. I live, eat, and drink art. And it shows in the work I do.
Let's take a look at your tie. Tell me about that.
This is called a naughty tie. It's another little something I came up with. It was originally to match the dogs' outfits when I started doing them. And people encouraged me to keep doing them because there was a book called 50 Shades of Grey coming out. And the light bulb went off again. And that's the way I think. I'm like, let's get it all quick. So what I did was I used women's lingerie materials, hence naughty. And I do the ties. And I also have a few of them here that I've done, and I incorporate Swarovski crystals in some of them as well. Beautiful. And they're all done from the materials from women's lingeries as well. And I've been stopped.
It matches.
There you go.
Oh, hey, hey, hey.
And I've been stopped in the streets. I've been stopped at parties. I've been stopped by the likes of Carolina Herrera. Dylan Lauren has come up to me and complimented me on my ties. So it's just taken off, and I'm getting orders for this. So I think we're going to start pursuing.
How can somebody get that? How can they reach your website?
Anybody can reach me at my website. I have a website, goes AnthonyRubioDesigns.com. Okay. And that's a fun site. You get looks at my designs, a lot of the events. We have a blog in there so you can see our adventures. We go on vacations, we take the dogs, we do fashion shows, anything and everything. And you can write to me through there, and you can get in touch with me. And if you're interested in placing orders, you could do it through there as well.
I love that. February 12th, what's going on? February
12th, oh my gosh, the Rescue Revolution. It's the New York Pet Fashion Show, the big annual event that comes around, and everybody's buzzed. Everybody comes from all over the country, and there's usually a theme. I had the honor of being given the title last year of Designer of 2014.
Oh, how wonderful.
The theme was the crown jewels. And this year, it's the 60s and 70s, and Bogie and Kimba are the poster boys. I designed hippie wear, so they're in psychedelic clothing. And we're going to be showing up in special costumes that I'm designing for us. We're going as the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club.
You know I'm going to be there, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait. Now, your blog, I just wanted to mention that because there's so much useful information. I was not aware that turkey skin is dangerous for animals.
Oh, yes.
Particularly at the holidays.
Yes.
When dogs come begging. And again, I know how you are with your safety and the issues. Some of the others, yes. Chocolate we know is bad.
Right. Raisins,
that really,
almonds,
raisins, I wasn't
all the
aware.
holiday treats that we like to eat, and as tempted as we are to share them, the pets are not, they don't digest things the right way, or it's dangerous for them. So you have to keep people leave chocolates around in the holidays and candies.
Yes,
another thing that people don't even know is poinsettias that they have decorating. The milk that comes out of those leaves is poisonous to the dogs. So yeah, you have to, if you're a pet owner, you should be aware of these things. You can find all of this stuff on Google. You can look it up online, but it's always good to be wary of these things.
One other very, very quick point is, and I don't know, is this taking place after Dancing with the Stars? Is there a show that you're on?
There was a show that filmed, it's called the
I have to laugh at that too.
World's Richest Dogs.
Oh my.
And they were doing a countdown of the top, the most the dogs that have inherited the most money. So there was like the most expensive. I think the dog German Shepherd inherited $22 million in Germany, and there was the Leona Helmsley story. But they featured in there in the New York socialites, our friend Bella Mia, with her mommy Roseanne Belosny.
Right.
And they also featured me as the designer, the top designer for the Pet Couturier to celebrities.
Well, I think that is incredible. Look how peaceful. I want to thank you so much for
you.
being on the show. And we're going to have you back because I want to get some more
you can have it
pictures.
whenever you like. Just invite me. I'm here.
Oh, I would give you a hug and a kiss, but
You hear
whoa.
him. Oh.
Thank
There's
you,
the warning.
Anthony.
Thank you.
Hi, Morgan. I'm here with Mr. America, the Leonberger, and also Morgan Williams of Viet. Welcome to Looking to Make a Difference with GAIL.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, this is terrific. His official name is Champion Storehaven's Irresistible American Idol, almost as big as he is. I call him the Gentle Giant. Hi. Hi there, baby. Okay, so you've been in quite a few different shows. Recently, I had seen the movie with Denzel Washington, The Equalizer. You and your brother were actually in there.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, it was really quite exciting, actually. We had my other dog, Zanzibar, and Mr. America. We went up to Massachusetts to film with Denzel Washington and Bill Pullman and for Columbia Pictures. And it was a great experience. We had so much fun. They all played with them, and they're really big dog people. And it was just a fabulous experience. And having Denzel walk around the set with America, it was.
Did he roll on the ground with
you know,
him?
well, Bill Pullman did.
He did. He did have fun. How could you not? I mean,
Yeah.
this is one of the most friendly dogs. You know, he's great with children. And before we go any further, you do so many different charities and nursing homes. If there's ever an event, you're the first one to say, I'll bring one of the guys.
Yeah.
And we love having Mr. America. In fact, I met you because I was in a fashion show and modeling toward the end, and then I heard that there's going to be a surprise guest at the end wearing fashions. And I laughed because as I turned around, there was Mr. America. And everybody was so excited. By the way, he's wearing one of Anthony's designs,
Yes.
isn't he?
Yes, this is an Anthony Rubio design, and
love
this is
that.
especially made for him. And this is a beautiful stars, red, white, and blue outfit. He's got a beautiful red tie that goes with it, but it's a beautiful fabric.
Because he
And-
models. He's going
and
to be
yes,
in the fashion
yes.
shows.
He's going to be in this year's fashion show as
February
well.
12th. I can't wait.
So,
It's going to be
yes.
exciting. So now tell me, he's been in Annie. He's done a couple of seasons of Annie.
Yes, he's done Annie.
Miracle Worker,
He's done Miracle Worker. He's done Oliver Twist.
Christmas
He's
Story.
done Christmas Carol.
So, well, but let me ask you, so Christmas Carol, rather. So how do you get him to be comfortable with lights? That light was bothering me before. How does a dog get comfortable with lights, with sounds, with children all around him, the audience react? How do you do that?
Well, you know, you have to desensitize a dog.
Oh.
It's very important that you desensitize them to the lights and the noise, and it's in stages. You have to take it slow and steady, and you start them when they're very young, and
Patience
and you take your time and you work with them, and you see what bothers them, and you know, some dogs it just doesn't work. You just can't do it.
But with
And,
Mr. America, it
you
does
know,
work because he
he's-
loves everybody.
Yeah.
He's so gentle with the children. And when they
He's so
see
gentle.
him, and he's so much fun. So
on,
who are
come on,
some of
get
the other celebrities that he has met? I know
Oh,
you've been
my
on the
goodness.
Today Show. I know
Come on.
you've been on
Yes, we've been on Good Morning America.
So tell
and
me some of the other
Fox
celebrities.
and Friends, and oh yeah, he knows. Oh, he met Billy Crystal, and he's met.
How did that go?
It was great. Billy was a little taken aback by him because he's quite large, you know, and but Billy liked him, and Rachel Ray and Ricky Lake. They're all very good friends with my dogs. I have 4 of them.
Yes, you
So-
do. You have
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Right.
You have Magneto.
Yep.
And
Zanzibar.
Zanzibar, who was in the movie.
Right.
Oh my God! So, come here, baby. I think you know what? You don't know where you're touching and where you're going to poke or anything. I'd like to show a clip with Zanzibar and you and I speaking once before, if I may. This will bring
Okay.
back some good memories
All right,
for
great.
you. And then we can talk about who some of the other celebrities are who actually own these dogs.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at that clip, please. Everything I can to hold Mr. America. I'm only 100 pounds here. And he's hysterical. He's still looking for you know what. But anyway, they're very calm. They're very gentle. They're known as the gentle giant. If other dogs get aggressive, they're pretty much going to do this. because they don't need to have any kind of squabble, which is great. When you were training them, when you were very young, how did you keep them from jumping on people?
Well, they like to play, and they enjoy playing with each other, and they enjoy playing with each other, and they enjoy, you know, just roughhousing together. But it's outside. You're not allowed. They're not allowed to do it in the house, even though they.
But you had to train them at a very early age.
Yeah.
I noticed that you took charge. You have to be firm, patient, and kind. But I did notice that. I got scolded for giving them the cookies before because they didn't want to listen after that. I spoil everybody. All right, so now I noticed that they are on stamps in Europe. They've chosen the Leonberger. Big honor.
Yes.
And of course, we know about royalty, Napoleon, the Prince of Wales, Bismarck, Umberto of Italy, right?
And I believe Princess Diana.
Princess Diana supposedly had one. Animals, dogs, are also used in assisted therapy. We know that because we know about, come here, sweetie pie. Come here, come here. I'm the one with the cookies.
There you go.
We know about Alzheimer's, both the caretakers and the patients. We know that it's used with people with autism. We know that, of course, used as service dogs, people who can't see. Dogs are used with people who are having psychological problems. They're used in prisons to also help to rehabilitate and to calm people down. Final note, dogs lower our blood pressure. They induce stress. They reduce stress hormones, right? Like serotonin. They make us feel good, give us more exercise. Doctors are thrilled because we feel better. And in addition to that, we also lose less time from work. We sleep better.
Yeah.
So that's my plea about dogs tonight. And I can't thank you enough for bringing the most gorgeous animals. I love the way you're leaning on him like he's a table. I couldn't stop laughing. But you know, he's just extraordinary. And of course, that was your other dog, and to have 4 of them, and to feed them, and to make sure. The dog is wonderful. The dog has become a family dog, definitely. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. But you do need space to own this dog.
Yes.
You do have to be able to move with the dog,
yes.
A car that accommodates. Speaking of which, does this dog drive yet?
Well, we try. It's, you know, we have a big truck for him. So
could I share that story? The other day we came out of training and the lights were on.
Yes.
One of the dogs put the lights on.
Yeah, they learn how to turn the lights on.
They learn how to do. You have to be so careful with them.
Windshield wipers.
Bismarck owned one of these dogs, the Leonberger.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Leary, Princess Diana. Mm-hmm. I don't know who else has, but those are the famous people that I came across who actually own this. And of course, we see the head, the Leonine figure, double coat. And Mr. America is probably, right now, it's extraordinary, the best coat that he probably will have at age 4.
Yeah.
Is that usually what happens? They have the double coat, water repellent. He loves the water. He has his own like page, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
And the only thing he doesn't like are peas.
Yes.
How did you find that one out?
He won't eat them. He just won't eat them. He
peas.
just says, you know, I'm not eating it, Mom.
He loves the water.
He
loves hotels. He loves beds.
He does. He does.
And he loves to cuddle, of course.
Does.
All right, so Heinrich Essig was a counselor in Germany, and he is the one who actually started this.
Yes.
He had seen the crest on the wall, I understand, and it was the Leonine figure, and he wanted to combine. So explain to us, so it's Newfoundland, St. Bernard, and what's later on?
And Great Pyrenees.
The Great Pyrenees.
Right.
Okay, so that's the actual derivation. Have to tell you something, too. I am so excited. Many people know, but not everybody, that I am going to be Mr. America's handler at Westminster.
Yes.
And the show, the date is?
February 17th. It's going to be down by Pier 94 in Manhattan. And the winners of the breeds will go to Madison Square Garden for that night. For
you hear
show.
that? We're going to do our best. Let me tell you, not as easy as people may think. We're training every week, and I'm learning different things. It's not just the gait when we're running, you know, how, at the certain pace, but how to stack Mr. America, who does so much on his own anyway, but to make sure that the paws are configured a certain way, the head has to be held. Am I going to have to show his teeth? That's
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so
You
you're
have
going
to
to
show his
teach.
teeth.
You're going to teach that one next.
Yes, you
You're
have
going
to
to show
show
me how to do that.
You have to show the bite,
The
and
bite?
then you have to show the teeth.
Judges sometimes will do it, but not often.
Yeah,
Is that
sometimes the judges will do it.
And this is
Sometimes
gonna
they
be,
won't.
This will be what, Channel 4?
Yes, Channel
and
4.
The USA, I think, is also going to carry it.
Yeah, it's
So,
gonna
so
be.
explain. So you have your Leonbergers,
Come on.
and you have the winner from there,
Yeah,
and then the next step.
yeah. You have your breed, your best of breed, and then after your best of breed, they go to the groups. Then you have a working group and toy group, and then you have that winner of that group, and then they go in for best of show.
And how many contestants are there? How many dogs?
Oh, thousands.
Thousands
Thousands
of dogs.
and thousands
It's
of dogs.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
like-
going to be in there as well.
Yes, I'm going with my other dogs. Hollywood is going, and Magneto is going.
We're competing against each other.
Yes,
Oh, no!
yes, and it's going to be so much fun.
We
though.
will
We're going to have a great time.
Great
you know.
time.
Yeah.
Where can someone reach you?
Well, anybody can reach us at our website, which is leonbergerfurion.com, LeonbergerFurion.com.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
thank you for being here. It's always great having you and
Yeah.
Mr. America, who's, I think, he's finally had it.
I think he's done. Come on. I think he's done. He's done. He's
At
like,
Westminster,
I'm
we're going to
tired,
pose,
Mom.
aren't we? There you go. There you go.
That's my boy.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
America.
Thank you. Oh.
Welcome back, and who am I with but Peter Mio. Peter, your voice is magical. Truthfully, I could listen to that all day long.
Thank you. Yeah,
It's
appreciate it.
extraordinary, and I know I shouldn't be surprised, but it's true. Every time I listen to it, I say, oh my God, this is amazing.
Thank
You have an incredible video that you're going to debut on today's show, and somewhere it was very special for me. I don't know if you know this, but when I entered the Miss New York and I won a Miss Senior America pageant, I needed a talent, and I decided to create a lyrical ballet to the music somewhere.
Somewhere happens to be a, in my opinion, one of the prettiest Barbra Streisand songs that she had actually covered, and we decided to put out an album of a compilation album of Barbra Streisand songs, and somewhere, and it is by coincidence that you had actually performed the ballet to somewhere. It is sheer coincidence that I've decided to use somewhere as our promo tune, and because of today's show, we decided to move the project up approximately 3 months, rather than record the whole album and release it all at once. We decided to record each individual song and release it as the production is warranted. So if it comes up, yeah. So that's where we're at right now, and somewhere is in my opinion, it is a beautiful.
Oh, it is.
Beautiful song.
It is. You can imagine friendship from it. It's just a hope for the future. That whole magical thing we were talking about. Now you just said something really special to me, so I'm going to ask you to repeat it about what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
The producers, they informed me today, in fact, the producers of my of this cover song somewhere, they did tell me today that they are going to be donating a portion of the net profit to the Sado Project and You Gotta Believe.
So beautiful.
To both, and they will distribute it accordingly. And that was a nice thing that they
That is
just
so
called us on the
kind
cell
of
phone.
you. That is kind of them.
Yes.
We're talking about for animals, animal rescue, abuse.
Correct.
And because Regina Calcaterra was here, we're also talking about You Gotta Believe.
That's right.
To help children who age out of foster care.
That's correct.
Because they still need love and they need their education.
Right.
Well, I'm excited about seeing
So
this
am I.
video,
So
so
am I.
why don't we take a look?
Barbara's interpretation, she wants a love to go on, to continue, but sings the song as if she knows it cannot. She also sings on behalf of her lover. Wait for us somewhere. There's a time. Somewhere starts off as a place, a dream, but ultimately becomes a friend that she is so desperately seeking help from. Her friend. Someday, somewhere, we'll find the new way of living. We'll find there's a way of
Just want to say thank you so much for being here, closing the show, the donations, so generous.
It's my pleasure, and it's great being here.
Mwah!
All
Thank
the time,
you.
Gail.
Thank you, Peter.